We are fortunate enough to be in the area that was considered one of the trolley car neighborhoods. As the trolley car extended its reach, people would build new developments out there, and they were built with the idea that people would walk to the trolley car and ride the trolley car into town. So for the most part, we have either lots of sidewalks or it's obvious where we should have sidewalks. And then shortly after that, we sort of got to the 1950s. Everybody had a car. There was the post-war boom that Adams was talking about, and everything sort of beyond us is no sidewalks. So I'm in the interesting situation when I go to Don and say, please, can I have a sidewalk? He will say, what's your PGI? And it's usually good. But it's still not an easy process. So I'll talk a little bit. My task has been to talk about how Metro Council works through the funding process. You may be right there. Let me move forward to get to where I am. Will it go straight to it, Norm?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an extra slide.
Extra slide. We'll get to it in just a second. Wait, we had our questions. Okay, so and you can tell I'm an engineer and not a marketing person, so these are pretty basic here. And so Cliff mentioned the Metro budget, and I've just got a couple of sheets out of the budget to sort of show you how this process works. What I'm showing you here in tiny print is the capital spending plan. If your project has made it into this category of the capital spending plan, you have hit pay dirt. This is the money that we have actually allocated, and it will be spent in this following year. And so I've circled under Public Works. They've got $17 million for sidewalks. As you saw on the slide earlier, that's the most we've had since 2003. Largely due to some really great attention that was focused on how badly people want sidewalks, because we were putting $19 million into a pedestrian bridge over the gulch, which will be wonderful for tourists and for the people that live there, but everybody was going, it's a sidewalk. Why are they getting more than an entire year's worth of budget for their sidewalk, and I can't get a sidewalk in our neighborhood? So that got the mayor's attention when the council member said, we think we're not going to fund this. And so he said, okay, fine, I will fund your neighborhood sidewalks as well. So we're up to $17 million. That's still not enough. As Adam showed you in that slide from 2003, when the strategic sidewalk plan was created, it was a 10-year vision, and they assumed $20 million a year would get them through that first vision. $20 million in today's dollars is $25 million. So if you don't do anything else from this, once you go home and write the mayor's office and say, we want at least $25 million in this year's budget. If they give us more, that'd be great too. So that's your homework. And then also, one of the other things we want to talk about is bikeways and greenways, which often go together, and that shows up in the parks budget. And last year we put $3 million in there for that. That has been sort of a slow and steady increase, but there's always money in it, and we are making progress on that, which is great. So then the next question is, how do you get to the capital spending plan? And that's another piece of the process. We have what's called the capital improvements budget, and it is basically a wish list. It is not hard to get on this budget. You just go, as Don said, I go to them and say, I have had neighbors call me because they want a sidewalk on, for example, Ackland Avenue and Love Circle. That actually happened because it was a repair, and repairs are easy to get. That sidewalk was already there. We'd already dealt with the stormwater issues. And so I went to Don and said, here's my list. You will see that there are other sidewalks on there, Sweetbriar, Blair, Portland. Those have not happened yet. But I gave him my whole list. Angie?
Quick question, is that public record?
This is public record. It's called the Capital Improvements Budget. If you go to a Citizen's Guide to the Metro Budget on the Metro website, somewhere in that part of that, you'll look for the Capital Improvements Budget. And for each year, it's like this thick, and it's everything anybody ever wished would happen. You can't get into the capital and spending plan if you haven't first gotten it on this list. And you'll notice this is a 5-year list. So you go to Don and you say, I've got these 10 projects. I know I can't have them all, but I just want you to be aware of them, and I would like you to help me develop costs for what they are. And he says, what's the PGI? And I say, it's high. I'm in a very walkable neighborhood. He says, okay, fine. I'll help you develop the cost. So then if these aren't already in the capital improvements budget, I add them there. And like I said, that part's easy to do. You just, we get a list during the budget season. We get this big process, and then we say, and I would like to add these 5 other sidewalks that I wish I could have. And so they appear on this list like magic, and that's not, doesn't mean that I will ever get them, but I know I will never get them if I don't get them onto this list.
So how do you verify that your council person has done that? If you've asked repeatedly, and then, I mean, it's almost like, once it's public record and you go there, it's too late, you know?
Yeah,
You ask and they
you can
say, oh, sure.
It's a 5-year process. I mean, so it's, you know, if he asked for it 4 years ago, it should be showing up somewhere along the line. And again, there's a citizen's guide to the metro budget for every year that's happened. So you can see if it's there or not. And the famous bowling sidewalk is in the capital improvements budget under my name, which I think is interesting because it's not really in my district, but I am a sidewalk advocate, and I think people know that. So somehow Public Works put it under my district, and if that helps them get it, that would be great. Yes, sir.
Are you going to talk a little bit about how you get onto this level?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Begging nicely. Basically, I'm not sure how other council members do it. I mean, I have my copy of the strategic sidewalk plan, so I can go in and say, by the way, these are on the plan, you know, and you're supposed to be marching your way through it. And I have these neighbors who have asked for it. Here's a petition with all their signatures on sworn. You know, can I please have this sidewalk? And usually, I mean, I have sort of gotten a yes, we'll fund this one every year. My first one is Chesterfield. I don't know how many of you have driven down Chesterfield. It has had a silt fence up for 3 years, which is aggravating to me. Partly because AT&T had an underground duck bank that was in the way. And so Public Works, I mean, they got mobilized, they were ready to do it, we were all thrilled. And then they went, okay, this isn't where AT&T told us was where it was. I mean, there's a due diligence process. They could go through the utilities, tell them what's there, and it wasn't where they said it was. So they said, AT&T, you have to move this. And AT&T said, that will cost us $1 million. We're not going to do it. And so we sat there and stared at each other for a year. And so finally they have said, okay, we will wait until you run this overhead. We're going to do the rest of the sidewalk later. We're still waiting for AT&T to move the last pole over before we finally get started. But that one is funded. It will eventually happen. But, you know, funding is not always the last piece of it.
But on Edmondson Pike, there are sidewalks that go around the pole, so why do you have to move the infrastructure?
In this case, it was part of the stormwater process. This was another one where they were going to have to put in a whole stormwater system, which also added cost to it, and that goes underground. And AT&T's lines were underground at exactly the level where the stormwater has to go. And because it's a gravity flow, you can't really adjust it. So now they're trying to move that out of the way.
How
Yes.
quickly does Public Works come up with this number? Like you put your suggestion forward, and then when does this number appear?
So these all were already in the strategic sidewalk plan. I sent them an email, and they came back pretty fast and said, you know, here's what it would cost to do these. You know, these are good. These are really pretty low. We probably won't get to them, but we'll put them on the list just to have them on the list. So, I mean, because those were ones that they had looked at back in 2003, they just, you know, indexed them up to those. So like I say, this is about step 3. You know, you get the neighbors to show interest. You go to Public Works with your list, you know, and sit down in their office and give them that, and then you get to this point. And that's Public Works. As Adams mentioned, there are other ways to fund things. The Safe Routes to School is a grant process. The mayor's office has helped some other districts do that. It's not that big a deal, and I think neighbors can submit that application. They just have to go to a workshop that happens, and I'm happy to give you information on how to do that. There are other ways to get, I moved on to bike lane. Let me see if I said everything I wanted to say about sidewalks. Mr. Reed mentioned the fact that I thought it was 50%, 57% of that $17 million that is in our planning, capital planning, is going to be for repairs. And so, you know, we'll only get 10 of that will actually go towards building new sidewalks, and that is much more expensive than repairing sidewalks. So it's still a slow process. So again, 25 million maybe. Hopefully that will happen. Funding of grants. Okay, and then we've talked a lot about advocacy, which I've kind of worked my way through. It is very helpful if you have a petition that says, we're the neighbors, we know we'll have to get up a little bit of right of way, and we support this project. I mean, even if you don't have every single one of them, it still helps to have almost all of them. to do that. So that advocacy is an important part of that. So that's the sidewalk piece of it, which I am very passionate about, because I probably walk more than I ride my bike, but I do enjoy riding bikes. And so I have also tried to be very supportive of the bikeway program as well. That, I think, kind of comes through two parts: public works funds, the infrastructure that happens in the streets, the bikeways, the bike boxes, the buffered bike zones. What other kind of things are being implemented so far? Sharrows. Protected bike lanes and things like that. So, and that, I mean, you can see there, there's $2.4 million that's just kind of there for every single year. And this probably will happen because, you know, the current mayor has been very committed to making it possible for people to use these. So that one, that is, and this, you can see there it says this project is district-wide. So that is not the example of a council member begging for this. This is just a long-range plan and the mayor's office intending to do that, which is great. So that will move into the capital spending plan. And then also parks, through the Greenways project, funds the bikeways that are also connected with greenways. And you can see there $45 million. That's pretty exciting. Again, this is the wish list, but that's for a master plan for Metro Parks and Greenways and the implementation of that. So that, again, I can't swear that every single bit of that amount of money made it into the budget, but that shows a commitment of the city to plan where those are going to go and to march our way through implementing that. Yes, sir.
And every year, do all 5 numbers come up for grabs every year, or only the number for this year comes up every year?
It's just a planning tool. It says, you know, if you know to do. I mean, every department does this. You know, so example, schools will say, we've got 50 different high schools, and we'll work on this one in year 1, and this one in year 2, and this one in year 3. You know, we'll plug in their $10 million each year, so we kind of have an idea of when it's all going to hit if we pluck these from these specific years. So,
all of the 5 years is up for grabs every year. Is it a rolling? I guess I'm asking.
it's rolling.
It's rolling, so you might take money from 2017 this year.
No.
Next year, someone might take some money from 2019, like that.
No, I mean this. You know, this is. We wish we could have this money over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And because this amount is hugely larger than what will end up in the capital spending plan.
Yeah.
You know, this is where you draw from to do the 2014-2015 capital spending plan. And then next year, these numbers will, you know, when we start looking at this year's capital improvement budget, it will begin with 2015-16, and probably these numbers will be there unless the council members or whoever or the department has said, well, we didn't get it last year, we'll shift it forward. So a lot of things just keep shifting forward. If nobody's paying attention and it's a project we decided wasn't worth having it and we've done it somewhere else, it can just drop off the table. So it's just an evolving document. So that is, I mean, basically, you make it into one of those budgets. The mayor and the departments have gone through the mayor's budget just recently, and the council will now begin going through budget hearings, and we'll listen to every department and talk about what they need. And so when Public Works comes up, and I hope to goodness says, and we want $25 million for sidewalks, you know, I'm going to be there raising my hand and saying, yes, how about 30? You know, in the end, you know, Rich Riebling will come in and say, here's how much tax money we have, and we have enough to do everything we've asked for, or it's never happened, we have more, what else do you want? You know, that would be nice. Or we don't have enough and we've got to cut this much money, where are we going to cut it from? You know, and everybody, I mean, you know, different people have different things that they care about. But generally, the mayor's budget doesn't look drastically different from the council's budget. We will take that budget, we'll have a worksheet day where we say, you know, these 5 things are important, you know, we need one more staff member in the planning so that they can give us more bike lanes or whatever, and if we can say, and here's a great place to get the money, it may or may not happen. So that is the funding piece of it. Yep, that's it, that's the whole thing. Let me make sure I said everything. Oh, I do want to talk just real quickly. You mentioned the bike parking, which was a collaborative effort of the BPAC. I mean, I had been saying I would like for us to have this legislation and then discover that the BPAC was working on it. So that it was something where different people came together and very thoughtfully looked at what other cities are doing and said, if we're riding our bikes to places, which we want to have the infrastructure to do, and then you get there and there's no place to put your bike, then we sort of miss the point. So now all new development, multifamily or commercial, has to provide accessible and easily usable bike parking, which I think is also pretty cool. So that's an example of figuring out a way to get the private sector to be doing, to be part of the team to provide the infrastructure that we need. Angie?
Berkeley, can you speak to, since we know like in our suburban neighborhood areas, just budget the vastness of Davidson County, there's a lot of streets that are never going to get sidewalks, that probably shouldn't get sidewalks, but we still have a lot of neighborhood streets where the speed limit is 30, and that means people drive 35.
Yeah.
So what kind of appetite is there around, like I live in a neighborhood that we jumped through all kinds of hoops to become a traffic calming neighborhood, right? So our speed limit is 25 all over our whole neighborhood, and that's great. But that doesn't mean that if you get a speeding ticket in my neighborhood, you get fined more. Or that doesn't mean that I get more, speeding enforcement patrols. So, the traffic calming program, there's not really any teeth in that. And then I wonder just Nashville-wide, what can we perhaps do to say, you know what, guess what, now all neighborhood streets are 25.
And I think, there is, for example, my neighborhoods, the two neighborhood associations that are both advocating for that. And so I have gone to Public Works and said, I just want all the side streets to be 25.
Right.
And, the traffic engineers who are, I'm an engineer and I get this, their job is to move traffic. They go, oh no, that will, But I think they are beginning to hear from so many people, and they know that Ventura wants to be a walkable city, that I think they're becoming more open to that. There are enough neighborhood, neighborhood linking organizations that if as an organization of neighborhoods, I think we all cry for that together on the side streets or the local streets or the small streets, that I think we could make that happen. And also, I will say, I think that in some sense, the enforcement is complaint driven. I've got two police officers here, which y'all may be able to help us. Generally, in my precinct, if I call and say, could you guys just pay a little attention to this street for this week because, the students are coming in and we just want to get them trained. If there's not serious crime going on, they've been pretty good about giving me that courtesy. Is that, I don't know what districts of town y'all represent, but is that a possibility in other parts of town as well?
Yeah, each precinct has a community coordinator that helps you out with assigning additional resources to a street you have a problem with. We work in the traffic division. I supervise the DUI unit and the fatal crash team on evening shift. So I'm limited in staff I have, but my DUI unit, and he works in the DUI unit, they come in at 9:30 at night. So if you have an issue that you're seeing at 9:30 at night till 6 in the morning or something like that, I can assign somebody out there to help you with that. Also, each precinct has a person that can help you with that as well.
Right, so our liaison, we can make that request.
And I will say, y'all are wonderfully responsive. Like if I call my community affairs coordinator at West Precinct, they're going to show up. But what gets people to stop speeding is consistency, right? So we all remember in our youth, in certain neighborhoods, the police were always in this certain place. And I still, at 42 years old, don't speed there. I don't speed anywhere. I really do try consciously not to. But the fact that the onus is always on the neighborhoods to say, well, guess what? There's still speeding here. Guess what? There's still speeding. It's me calling again next week and next month and next year again and again and again. And it's just.
I guess I would say there are several solutions.
Okay.
One is physical change to your infrastructure, like speed humps or what we have on Fairfax, or which are those funny lines that I think are really cool but other people hate. There are, the chicanes, there is intermittent enforcement, when your police officers are willing to do it. Or you can spend the money to get one of those little flashing lights that says you're going too fast. And I know that some neighborhoods have just, as a group spent that money and put those there, and I think those may be a deterrent as well.
Public Works also has a speed trailer.
Yeah, and they'll put it there temporarily.
But you don't back that up with enforcement. So you put the speed trailer there and it flashes and everybody knows that doesn't mean there's a motorcycle at the end of the street that's going to catch you. So I wonder too, from a budgetary standpoint, I understand that historically in traffic enforcement that you all had a very large force of folks that were just dedicated to speeding and traffic enforcement, but that's no longer the case. Can you speak to that?
Yes, in 2004, there was a study done in the police department that suggested we disband our traffic division and keep a 4 unit, and that's what they did. From when I started in traffic in 2001, we had 15 crash investigators on day shift, 15 on evening shift, and we had approximately 15 or 20 motorcycles that did enforcement activities throughout the county. When they disband traffic, they moved all those investigators up for 5 on days and 5 on evenings to precincts. So now the core traffic division is a 5-unit officers on day shift that work only fatal, critical, life-threatening crashes. 5 officers on detail, which is 2:30 to 11, that work the same crashes. And I have a DUI enforcement unit of 9 people that work from 9:30 to 6, and they focus on DUI enforcement. They do some traffic enforcement, but it's traffic enforcement looking for DUI.
Well, I think we're close to our end, so I'm gonna turn it back over to Nora and let her wrap things up.
Great, well, thanks, that was really helpful.